Hi all, it's Azad Singh here and I'm back again with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about Aamir Khan and his popular transformation story for the movie Dangal. Now, the movie was released quite a while back. I'm actually very late making this video. However, it's still relevant for a few reasons. Reason number one being he's 52 years old. Reason number two being he recently turned vegan. And reason number three being this seems to be a pattern where different actors and actresses have these transformation stories kind of publicized and used as promotion for movies. So I want to get right into the topic, and I want to get a little bit into the debate of, was this possible naturally or with the use of performance enhancing drugs? So before I get into all of that, I want to very quickly review the movie. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant movie. It's one of my favorite Bollywood movies out there. I'm a massive wrestling fan, so it was great to see well-trained actors and actresses in the movie who actually went out and spent months and months learning how to wrestle. They made the moves very realistic, unlike some other boxing films and such which have been released out of Bollywood. It's about a amateur level wrestler from India who wasn't able to take his passion of wrestling to a professional level because of financial reasons. He basically trained his daughters to an international level in wrestling, and it's a very inspiring story, and I do encourage you to go out and watch the movie because it's brilliant. So Aamir Khan in this movie had to play two very different roles. He had to play the role of a young guy who was an amateur wrestler and had a fantastic physique, and he also had to play the role of an older gentleman who was a coach to his daughters and who was very out of shape and looked quite overweight. As the story goes, he actually gained a bunch of weight. I believe it was in the region of 25 kilos in order to play the role of the coach, the older gentleman, first. Then what he did was get shredded. So he was previously in half decent shape. He gained a bunch of weight in order to play the roles of the older gentleman and the coach. And then he got absolutely shredded over a period of about 6 months, I believe it was, in order to play the role of the guy as a young amateur wrestler. Now, before you get into the debate of whether he used steroids or whether this was achievable naturally, there's really a few things you have to consider, and that's all I'm going to be proposing to you today. The first thing that you need to consider is the pictures themselves and the transformation story very much sell the movie. Before this movie was released, this was viral across the world over newspaper headlines and magazines and over social media. It was very much about Aamir Khan's amazing transformation, and he's gone from overweight to absolutely shredded, and it was showing his workouts and his diet that he's doing also. They're very much used for promotion for the movie, so that's something to keep in mind. The other secondary point to that is that they very rarely look in the movie how they actually do in all of this build-up. So in this build-up, they release amazing images where they look absolutely shredded and the pictures have been doctored somewhat. And a good example of this is Salman Khan from the movie Sultan. Now, Sultan was a movie that was released at the same time as Dangal. It was also a wrestling-based movie. And some of the promotional images that came out with that movie were him with the six-pack of abs, even though he was looking quite high body fat percentage. And when you go on ahead and actually look at the movie itself, which I did do, he just wasn't in the same shape as he was in those images. So it's kind of this idea that the images do sell the movie, they do promote the movie, they want you to go out and watch the movie. And unfortunately, sometimes they aren't in that shape that they actually show in the images. The second point that you should definitely consider is that these high level actors and actresses do have personal trainers. They have elite level gourmet chefs basically under their employment. So it was Ranveer Singh's personal trainer who actually came onto BBC Asia Network, and I was listening to this show at the time, and he was going through the protocol of how he helped Ranveer Singh get into shape for one of the movies. And what he kind of disclosed on this radio discussion was that he would set up the macros and calories, and obviously the workouts too, but the macros and calories specifically. And what he would do is send those details over to Ranveer Singh's gourmet chef. So he had a 5-star gourmet chef under his employment, and that gourmet chef would then create meals using those macros. He would create high-level pre-packaged, I'm sure they were brilliant tasting meals which would fit into the macros and fit into the calories that were suggested by the personal trainer. Many of us do not have that luxury, so that's worth keeping in mind. These are people who are very busy. They have PAs, they have personal assistants, they have chefs running around and giving them pre-packaged meals to a very high standard. This is all something that you should be considering. The third point that I want to make is actually that it's their job as actors and actresses to play sometimes the role of people who are big and aesthetic or carry a larger muscular frame. An example of this might be playing the roles of warriors and soldiers in movies like 300, Troy, etc. Also movies like Hercules, for example. How happy would we be exactly watching a movie of Hercules and having him being a scrawny 70 kg guy? It just wouldn't happen, right? There's an image to fit, and this is something that's increased over the years, and we can thank people like Arnold Schwarzenegger for that. To people like him and Sylvester Stallone brought the whole muscle scene into Hollywood and into movies, and now there's not really any going back. There's actually a great example of this as well, where we can look at a G.I. Joe toy from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and even to the present day, and we see this massive increase in muscle mass from just something as simple as a toy. But it just goes to show how the culture changed in movies and in shows, and to present power and to present strength became quite a big role. The fourth point that I think you should consider is the fact that this isn't the first time Aamir Khan was in shape. I mean, do you remember PK? Do you remember Ghajini? Sure, we don't need to go all the way back to the days of Lagan. He actually wasn't in shape there, but this isn't the first time he's been muscular. So the way I saw this story portrayed on social media was as if he'd never had any muscle mass previously, which just isn't the case. He wasn't just somebody who was overweight and nearly 100 kg and then he shredded down to about 67 kilos, I believe. That wasn't the case. It was very much a case of he had a decent amount of muscle mass previously, he gained weight, then he went back to that decent amount of muscle mass. And as an extension from the previous point, I just want to mention the fit to fat to fit transformation, which came out a number of years ago. We're talking 5 or 6 years ago. And this was popularized because the transformation story came out of a personal trainer who wanted to see how his overweight clients felt. He already had a six-pack of abs. He already had a brilliant structure of muscle mass as if he'd been training for over a decade. And what he did was he purposefully overfed in order to get overweight. And then what he did from that place was to cut down back to where he was. And this was known as fit to fat to fit. The way that these images are sometimes portrayed in the fitness industry is by, instead of taking the journey from step 1 to 2 to 3, they will just show you step 2 to 3, meaning you'll see somebody who's overweight, then you'll see somebody who's actually shredded. Now, it's only a trained eye like myself who's been working in the industry for a number of years who can actually see that the person in step 3 has actually been working out for over a decade, and it's just not possible to do that kind of jump in 3 months or so. There's definitely more to the story, and once you actually zoom out a little bit and actually look at the step 1 also, it begins to make a lot of sense. So it's very similar what happened with Aamir Khan. Ultimately, it's important to consider all of these things that I've mentioned before you make up your mind about whether this was naturally done or done with the use of performance enhancing drugs. I mean, he probably used steroids. He also probably didn't. It really doesn't impact you and your gains. I mean, I'll leave it up to you guys to decide. So let me know what you think in the comments below. But if you like this video, please leave me a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.